Good evening. Thank you for joining us on tonight. We're going to go ahead and get started. If you haven't done so at this time, could you please go ahead and mute your audio? Welcome to our 360 Road to Home Ownership series. We are now on session 3, which would be our road rules, what to expect. Our next session will be housing tune-ups. That will be on August 26th, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. The agenda will follow. Introduction of the director and outreach staff, a mini commercial from our Fair Housing Department, introduction of the guest speakers, upcoming events, and final remarks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Onika, and I would like to introduce our director. His name is Mr. Tom McCaslin. And I would like to introduce the outreach team. Again, I'm Onika Porter. I'm the administrative manager. Latasha Smith, she's the community involvement coordinator. Pedro Sosa, he's the community liaison. Becky Benitez is also a community liaison, and Dejanay Jones, community liaison.
The Fair Housing Act prohibits housing discrimination based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, disability, and familiar status. If a landlord refuses to rent to you because of your service animal, the language you speak, or the color of your skin, you may have been a victim of housing discrimination. If you feel that you have been discriminated against, call the Department of Housing and Urban Development at 1-800-669-0777. Want to learn more about fair housing rights? Call the Fair Housing Hotline at 832-394-6240.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Mabel Menifee. I'm with the Harris County Appraisal District, and I'm very happy to be here this evening to participate in this this video program to sort of help explain how the Harris County Appraisal District fits into the home ownership and the property tax process. So again, I want to thank everyone for, I want to thank the Community Development Department for inviting us. So I just want to tell you a little bit about Hcad appraisal districts, as I said before, and some additional information as you go into the home ownership process to kind of help you understand a lot of things, and also a number of things in terms of the annual calendar that the appraisal district operates under, what you can expect to receive from us, as well as some things that you can take advantage of in order to save money on your property taxes. So first of all, what is a central appraisal district? We are the Harris County Central Appraisal District, and there is actually an appraisal district in each county in Texas. They were established back in the late 1970s so that there would be one central place where all property within that county is valued for property tax purposes. And as you know, there is no state income tax in Texas. So property taxes are the way local expenses are primarily funded. So what are our responsibilities? They are to appraise all county, residential, commercial, agricultural, as well as business personal property in the state of Texas. And for purposes tonight, we're going to be largely talking about residential properties. We're obliged to appraise at 100% of market value. And when do we do that? We do that as of January 1st of each year. So what that means is that, and this is something you'll probably need to remember in terms of when you file for an exemption, a homestead exemption or other things, is that the all things are based on the condition of the property as of January 1st of that year. So what that basically means is that, for instance, if you have if you're living in the property on January 1st and say you have a fire and a room is destroyed on January 3rd, basically that means that the property is still going to be valued based on its condition as of January the 1st. Now, if the next January the 1st rolls around and you have not been able to repair, or for whatever reason that room has not been repaired, then the property will be revalued based on its diminished value. The other two primary responsibilities of Hcad is to manage exemptions and maintain the records for those. And then our other goal is to, and this is one that we typically are approaching this time of year, is to certify the appraisal rolls. And what that means is that the value that has been assigned to the property is then certified once once individuals have had a chance to protest that value and the value has been settled or changed. We will then certify the appraisal rolls to all of the taxing jurisdictions. A lot of people ask, what's the jurisdiction? That's basically any entity that you pay taxes to. So in the case of Harris County, if you live in the city of Houston, you're more than likely you're paying to the county, you're paying county taxes, you're going to pay city taxes as well as school taxes, and Port of Houston and some others. If you live outside of the city of Houston or in certain parts, you may also be paying to a MUD district or another special district. Next slide, please. And we'll go to the next slide, which will be, just wanted to, if you have any questions or you're interested in additional information about Hcat, I wanted to just show you this slide of our website, which is at www.hcad.org. On it, you can find out quite a bit of information. If you're looking for properties, you can of course go to the property search tab and it'll drop down and you can search real properties. It's one way that if you file for an exemption and you want to make sure your exemption has been applied, you can look on this website and it will show, once you look up your property, it'll show whether or not a residential homestead exists on that property. You can also find all kinds of forms on it under that tab towards near the right side. We also have helpful maps. And if anyone's looking for a job, we have a career site as well as other additional information about Hcat. Okay, and then we'll go to and then on the next slide, we're going to take a look at, I mentioned about January 1st as being the date of appraisal, a very important date in the way your property is valued. April 30th is the exemptions applications deadline. We're going to talk a little bit more about exemptions in a minute, but that's really sort of a soft deadline to make sure that we get all of them in and that it's applied to your account prior to your tax bill being calculated and mailed out. You can still get the exemption for that year as long as you put it in before the end of the year, but it could mean that you would still pay the taxes for what you originally billed, and then you would get the refund from the tax office. So May 15th, that is the all-important protest deadline. When you get your annual valuation notices from Hcat, and that's typically you're going to get basically two pieces of information from us annually. One of them is going to be the annual protest. One of them, sorry, will be the annual valuation notice. When you receive that, you're going to have a finite amount of time to say, if you take a look at it and say, well, Hcat, I don't agree with this. I don't think my property should be valued this much, or perhaps it's even valued too low. You have the opportunity to file that appeal and to provide information as to why you disagree. Also in October, the tax bills are mailed out. And then of course, by February 1st, any bills that have not been paid by February 1st are delinquent. One thing I want to point out here is I mentioned earlier about certification. Typically, once Hcat has certified the tax appraisal roll, as we call it, in other words, here is the value for all of the land and properties in the state, in the county. And what happens then is we turn that over to, as I mentioned, the jurisdictions, and the jurisdictions then they take that taxable value and then they calculate their tax rates. So in other words, they set the tax rates once they look at the taxable value that has been determined by Hcad. They look at their budgets, what needs to be funded, and so they set the tax rates accordingly. And then from that tax rate, your taxes are calculated, and the tax bill is mailed out usually by your tax assessor collector. In some parts of Houston, you're going to receive one bill. That's usually going to be from the office of Ann Harris Bennett, the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector. However, you may also pay to other jurisdictions such as MUD districts and other special districts that have their own tax assessor collectors. So you could receive multiple bills. And some school districts as well also have their own collection assessors. Next slide, please. So I mentioned about the two things that you can expect annually from Hcad. One of them is the annual valuation notice. That is the notice that we generally send out in March and April that determines the value, that tells you the value that we have established for your property. Now, I want to point out here on this letter, and this is what it looks like, that you're going to receive two values. One is going to be the market value. The other will be something called the appraised value. Sometimes those two numbers will be the same. Other times they're going to be, the appraised value is going to be lower than the market value. Keep in mind that the appraised value is the value upon which you pay taxes. The market value is what Hcad determines in terms of the value at which your property would sell to a willing buyer on the open market. In other words, we're looking at what those homes are being sold for and establishing a value based on the comparability of the homes that are being sold. And as I mentioned, the appraised value is going to usually be lower than the market value, and that's going to be because you have usually because you have a homestead exemption on it. There's several benefits of having that homestead exemption. Very important that that first year, once you settle into that home, and don't get too excited, and don't forget to file for that homestead exemption when the time comes, because if you don't, you're literally giving away money. So let's talk a little bit about that. If we can go to the next slide. Did mention before I talk about exemptions, I did want to mention the opportunity when you get that valuation notice to protest. Now, the protest deadline is going to be on that form, and it's a unique, and you'll have certain things you need to pay attention to, and always remember that the deadline for protesting your property value is May 15th, because they usually come out in late March, early April. So you're going to have until May 15th. That's generally the deadline. However, if yours is sent late, you're going to have at least 30 days from the date that's on that notice to apply to send in your protest notice. And those forms, again, are available on our website. They are fillable, or you're going to always get one with the valuation letter that you receive in the mail. You can also file it online. I do want to mention here that once you get settled in and you want a receipt, you get that letter. We do offer in the spring, as those letters are going out, Hcat offers protest workshops that help walk you through that process, what you can do, what you need to do to prove that your value is to prove that we need to change that value based on the information that you provide. So feel free to keep an eye on our website starting in March, just to find out when those workshops are. And again, a lot of them will be virtual. So you can sit at home, prepare dinner, and listen, and then chime in with a question when you need to. Let's go to the next slide. So I want to get to exemptions, and what are they? Exemptions exclude part of your property from taxation, as I mentioned, and you qualify as of January 1st of the following the year that you moved in. So what are those exemptions? And one thing I want to make make sure that everyone understands that those exemptions, those qualifications for exemptions are going to be based on your qualifications as the owner, and they are not based on the property. A lot of times there's confusion. People will move into a home that was once owned by a relative, a deceased relative perhaps, and perhaps that relative was paying less in property taxes, and so you would like to keep that at that rate. However, they probably were receiving that because perhaps they were over 65 or perhaps they were disabled. Once you move into that home, you as the owner no longer qualify for those exemptions. And so you would need to reapply for the general resident homestead exemption, which is the most common one. And as your primary residence, that is, you are of course eligible for that. The other is the over age 65. As I mentioned before, there are some additional benefits to that. The over age 55 surviving spouse exemption. There's a disability exemption. There's also an exemption for disabled veterans, and it's rated based on their degree of disability, and it comes as a part of their service for service engendered disabilities. There's also something called the survivor of a first responder killed in the line of duty. That would be for the wife or family of a first responder, as long as they remain unmarried. There's also something called, and this one is relatively new, it's called the heirship exemption. And that allows individuals who inherit property, but they may be the ones living there. However, there could be additional owners. And in the past, because there were additional owners, they were not the full owner, they could not get the 100% exemption. This new heirship exemption allows that individual living in the home to receive the full exemption benefit, and it does not affect the inheritance or ownership rights of the other heirs. So let's move on to the next one. Talk a little bit about the general resident homestead exemption, which is the most common one. You must, as I said, own and occupy the home as your primary residence on January the 1st. Some of the benefits for that are going to include a 10% appraisal increase cap. Those of you who may have been looking for homes out there now know how rapidly how active the market is, and how rapidly prices are increasing. So what that homestead exemption does for you is that it protects you from some of those huge jumps in value, that like the ones that we're seeing out there now. Your value, your appraised value cannot go up more than 10%, even though you may be in an area where you're seeing values increase 15-20% or even more. There are also other exemptions that are offered by various jurisdictions. So let's go on to the next slide. So a little bit about the over 65 and disability exemptions. So if you're over 65, you qualify again. Unlike the homestead, the year that you turn 65, you qualify for this exemption. And what this does is offers more additional exemptions above and beyond the general resident homestead exemption for many homeowners. The same is true of the disability exemption. It's kind of similar to the over 65, depending on how you're rated. So some of the benefits for both of those are you get an automatic school tax ceiling freeze. So in other words, whatever you're paying in school taxes that you paid the year you turn 65, they will never go above that. If the value drops, they can go down, but they are frozen, if you will, at that amount. And they will remain so unless, of course, you make improvements to the property in terms of adding value, such as a swimming pool, or you add a room or two. Then that value is going to be reset because you've changed the nature of the property. What it also does is give you an additional $10,000 exemption for school taxes. The general resident homestead exemption automatically wipes off 25,000 of your taxable value for school taxes. Once you turn 65, you get an additional $10,000 off, so that's 35,000. For those of you who live in, well, everyone I assume lives in Harris County, you are going to get what that homestead exemption does is it provides for the first $229,000 worth of value to your home, you pay no taxes on it. So in a lot of cases, that means there are some people who pay no county tax. It also makes you eligible for a tax deferral, and you can also contact the tax assessor collectors in order to pay your taxes in installments without penalties. You're able to do that over 65. However, you can also contact them whether you're over 65 or not. If you're unable to pay, for whatever reason you're unable to pay, you may want to contact them right away to make some arrangements. And why that's important, it's because as of July 1, any taxes not paid that were due at the beginning of February that are not paid by July the 1st, they are then turned over to collection, and that means additional collection fees and attorney's fees. And it's very easy to avoid that with our county tax assessor collector by contacting them and making arrangements. Next slide, please. So here's another one that you can qualify for that a lot of people don't know. There is something called an over 65 surviving spouse exemption. So if your deceased spouse or you were already receiving, because of their age, the over 65 or disability exemption, and you are at least 55 years of age as a surviving spouse, you can receive all of those over 65 exemption benefits. That includes the school tax ceiling continues as well. You're also eligible for something called a tax deferral, and you're eligible to pay taxes in installments without penalty. Let's go to the next slide, please. I mentioned a little bit about the heirship exemption. As a new homeowner, you might not necessarily be too relevant, but I did want to just get that out there in terms of individuals who may be living in a property where they have not been able to take advantage of the homestead exemption or the over 65 because they have sisters and brothers or whatever living elsewhere who also have ownership rights to the property. They can now get that 100% exemption, as I mentioned before, and it does not affect in any way the ownership rights of the other heirs. They would simply need to fill out the section 3 of our homestead application, which is found on our website, and provide additional information, which is also on our website, but you can see it here. They would need an affidavit establishing the ownership interest, and that can be a heirship affidavit or the form 5114A affidavit. And that's also on our website. And they would need to provide a copy of the death certificate for the prior owner of the property, a copy of the most recent utility bill, that's so that we can make sure that they are indeed living there, and a citation of any court record relating to the applicant's ownership of the property, if it is available. It is not necessary. Our Hcat exemptions group will work with you on that, but again, I think this is a very important one, particularly for residents living in some of our more mature neighborhoods. And so you may know of someone that you can perhaps spread the word about this one. Next slide, please. So I wanted to kind of show this chart to kind of give you an idea of why exemptions are one of the filing for your exemption should be at the top of your list once you become a homeowner and you are eligible. So taking a look at this, you can kind of see with no homestead exemption on a home that, say, the average price in Harris County of a home, well, this might have been a few months ago, but maybe about a year ago, was $177,000. So you have Harris County and the city of Houston allowing the 20% homestead exemption. So with no homestead exemption, you would be paying a bill of roughly $4,500. With the homestead exemption, your tax bill would be reduced to $3,300. With the disabled or over 65 exemption, as you can see, when you turn 65, you're gonna be paying about a third of what you were paying without it. So that's kind of important to know in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, if you do not file for your homestead exemption, you're simply giving money away. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. So how do you apply for an exemption? As I mentioned before, your application can be filed by mail. You can send it in. There are paper forms that you can print out on our website, or you may be given one. You can also use our mobile app to apply online, or you can email it. You can go to our website and use the fillable form to email. Depending on when you submit it, the processing time may take longer, but it's very important for you to go ahead and submit everything at once, and they can usually be done very quickly. If something is missing, that take additional time for 30 days to get you a letter out, you have another 30 days to respond. So try and go ahead and get all of the information that you can, and that includes filling out that application. If there are two people's names on the property, you want to make sure you're going to need to submit a copy of the owner or owners' driver's licenses. Those driver's licenses, the address on the driver's license must match or correspond to that of the property for which you're requesting an exemption. So that oftentimes leads to delays when people don't submit the driver's license at the same time. You can submit the temporary one as you're waiting on your permanent one to arrive in the mail. Also wanted to mention that once your exemptions have been approved and applied to your account, we typically notify you that they've been approved. And you can also verify them, as I mentioned before, on our website, where we'll say residential homestead exemption if you've applied for the residential one. It's also going to say, if you've applied for your over 65, it will say residential and it will say multiple. And we can't say over 65 because state law doesn't allow us to identify the age of a property owner on the public site. So again, you can also find them on the back of your annual valuation notice. It lists all of the jurisdictions to which that particular property falls under. So we can go to the next slide, please. And qualifications. Once again, all you need to do is own and occupy the home as your primary residence as of January the 1st. And again, don't forget to submit your driver's license or your state issued ID card with the property. And let's go to the very next one, and that's about it. And I had that one float in because I want to remind everybody, do not assume that exemptions that we, for instance, with the over 65, don't assume that we know when you turn 65. There may be some forms that individuals have provided that actually have their age on it, and we may go ahead and change that. However, that is not the case in so many circumstances. So please, exemptions, never assume an exemption is going to be granted automatically, and especially if it's a general resident homestead exemption, you have to apply. And one other thing I just wanted to mention is I mentioned to you early on that you receive typically 2 notices from Hcad each year, unless we were involved in changing something or whatever. The other one is going to be your annual exemptions confirmation card that we send out usually in December. And it's just going to list the exemptions that we have on record for you. And if nothing has changed, you do not need to do anything. That's just a card that confirms it. If we, however, get that back because it's not forwardable, then the Hcad typically we make a couple of efforts to reach the individual to see if this exemption or the confirmation card is correct. If not, then that exemption may well roll off the home because we've been unable to verify that that person still lives there. So if for some reason you don't think you don't remember getting your exemption card that year, you can always go out on our website and check to see if you're still listed with a homestead exemption, or give us a call. Next slide, please. And how do you contact us? You can contact us in our office at 13013 Northwest Freeway. I believe I saw a question pop up that asked if we had resumed normal office hours. Yes, we are still open. It would be, we do recommend that you call for an appointment. However, we are open, the front desk. There are people at the front desk who are able to assist you. You can also go to our website, which I showed you earlier, or you can email us at help@hcad.org and ask your questions there. Please be sure to include an account number or an address of the property if you have it, which will help us be able to answer your questions much faster. You can give us a call at 713-957-7800. However, as the largest county in Texas and the largest county in the nation that does annual appraisals, and the third largest county, period, our telephone system can be very busy at times, so you may want to also use one of these other methods. We also provide information on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and as well as Nextdoor. And I think that is about it for my presentation tonight. And I guess, am I answering the questions now, or should we do so at the end of the person?
We'll go ahead and proceed with questions at this time.
Okay.
We're gonna start reading them off for you.
And let me just say, if there are any specific questions as it relates to how a property is appraised or valued, I may not be able to get those answers to you tonight because I'm not an appraiser. However, any questions that you want to ask, I will take, and I may need your contact information, and I'll be more than happy to get back to you.
Okay, our first one here, does everyone qualify for a homestead exemption?
By everyone, if you are a homeowner and the home is in your name, yes, you qualify for it. If it is a rental property, or it's not, you own another home or you already have a homestead, you can only qualify for one of those.
Okay. Will you need to bring in invoices for any home improvements to ensure the appraisal is correct or up to date?
Oh, okay. No. If there is some, for instance, if there's been some incorrect information in the way your property has been described, you can contact us, or there's also the opportunity to fill out something called a correction form. Invoices or bill of sale is probably going to be something that you would use as evidence. Were you going to a protest hearing once we valued your property and you said, no, it's been valued too high, I didn't pay that much for it? The sale, generally, the bill of sale is going to generally pretty much establish what you paid for it. So yeah, you would bring that in. If you're looking to say my home isn't valued, isn't worth as much as it's been valued at, because I've got X number of repairs that need to be done and I could never sell it for what you valued it at, Hcat, then you might want to bring in invoices for repairs and such. But I think based on how I'm hearing that question, those are probably going to be primarily with the protest related issues.
Okay. Are the Hcat office hours back to the normal business hours?
Yeah, we're open from 8 to 5. Our front office, our front lobby is open from 8 to 5. We are still on a rotating schedule of about 25 to 50% occupancy. And a lot of that has to do with this is hearing season. So there are a lot of members of the public out that are also out at the building waiting on hearings that they have scheduled for that day. But to answer that question, yes, we are. You can gain access to the building from 8 to 5.
Is there an exemption appeal process?
There for exemptions, you I don't know about appeals, but yes, you can. If you need to, if you've been denied an exemption, you can certainly bring that information up with our information and assistance in our exemptions department. The rules are fairly cut and dry, but for your eligibility, but you can certainly, we're open to you providing any additional information that might help if you feel like you've been unjustly denied an exemption.
And Ms. Mabel, this will be our last question for you. If I want to buy a home in November, when should I apply? Since the qualifications say I must be a resident since January 1st.
So if you close by December 31st and you've taken ownership, then on January 1st you are eligible. If you don't close by then and haven't, it generally says own and occupy, so you should actually have closed and moved in, but ownership and have moved out of any dwelling in which you may already have had an exemption, then it might come into play. If you were still living in that dwelling, even though you had bought the home on January 1st, then you would only get the exemption for the older property, which is why we say own and occupy. So you should own that property and actually be living in it on January the 1st. Or at least spend the night in it and have your other property taken off. So yes.
All right, Ms. Mabel, do you mind going ahead and repeating your contact information just one more time for those who may have missed it?
Sure. Again, my name is Mabel Menifee. I'm with the Harris County Appraisal District. You can contact us. You can contact me through Hcad, or you can contact us through the help desk, which is help@hcad.org. Or you can, our general phone number is 713, I'm sorry, I better double check the number. Our number is 713-957-7800. Again, email at help@hcad.org. Our website is www.hcad.org, and there is a portal on there for you to also contact us and send information. So, and again, as I mentioned earlier, our offices are open.
Thank you, Ms. Mabel. Thank you so much for your time.
Our next guest, Juanita Guillory with Claims Catastrophe Supervisor Investigator with Mid-America Claims.
Good afternoon or good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
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 Awesome. Awesome. My apologies. I've had every type of technical difficulty getting into this call. So that means that there's some important information that you all really need to hear. So thank you for bearing with me. And we're going to go ahead and jump right in, okay? Right. So basically what we're going to talk about is insurance. And there's so many different aspects of insurance, but since we're speaking of ownership, I'm going to try my best just to try to condense what insurance is all about. Insurance is multifaceted. It can deal with your home, your car, your health insurance, your life insurance, but it's too broad for me just to dive into all of it. So there's some things that are going to be on the screen that we may just kind of skim over a little bit, but I'm going to try to focus on the home ownership aspect of it. Okay. Somebody may say, what is insurance and what is the importance of insurance? Insurance, basically, in a nutshell, is a contractual agreement. It's a contract. It's an agreement between an individual and a company, basically saying that they will give you monies or they will indemnify you in the event of a loss. Okay, so let me explain that a little bit more. Insurance is an agreement between you and the company, saying that if something happens to you, if something happens to your property, that they will be there to pay you for that loss, contingent and based on the contract that you sign or the agreement that you come to about the type of insurance that you need. Okay, so right now we're going to focus on the contractual part of it, more so than all the other definitions that are out there. Okay, let's go ahead to the next slide. Insurance, again, as I stated, it's a contract. Literally, when you're preparing to purchase a home, purchase a car, the company that you're purchasing from will let you know that you need insurance. Okay. What they're saying is we need protection, or we need something saying that in the event this property is either destroyed, if it's damaged, that there will be something out there that will pay for this damage. So you enter into this contract basically reading the terms, their terms and conditions of a contract, and that if something happens, the insurance company will do A, B, and C as long as you take care of your obligation as well. Okay. So again, it is a consideration and a contract between two people. I'm sorry, a person and an actual entity. It is a legal document. Okay. And we'll go into that a little bit more. It's binding and it is a legal document. Okay. Let's go ahead to the next screen. So this here is what is an insurance risk. And again, I'm going to just kind of condense all of this. When we're speaking of your home is considered a risk. A risk is anything that has the potential to have damage. It has the potential to cause damage to someone else or to cause injury to someone else. Your home, with this program being home ownership, your risk is considered your home. What has exposure? What has the threat of being damaged? So when we're speaking of home ownership, a lot of insurance companies will refer to your home as a risk. Okay, what has that exposure that might potentially be damaged and cause you to have to file a claim, or someone file a claim against you. Okay, I want to mention real quick. A lot of times people wonder, when I purchase insurance, why the rates may be different from one area to another. When we speak of insurance, we are all paying into a pool in order to be able to pull from that pool whenever we need to, whenever there's something catastrophic, or whenever there's some type of loss, we're able to pull from that pool. So you have one area that their rates may be more than another area. And again, it's all based on the exposure and the potential of the risk. Okay. So sometimes you may have rates that are cheaper in Harris County, and then they're a totally different rate in Liberty County. Okay, they determine your premium based on the exposure of the risk. And if I'm saying things that really sound too far-fetched, write your questions down. I'll make sure that I explain it a little bit more. But the area that you live in, your county can determine how much premium you are paying based on the type of exposure in that area. Okay, let's go ahead to the next slide. Principles of indemnity. So indemnity basically means payment. Insurance companies agree that if you're paying your premiums, as stated on your contract, that if you have a loss, they will indemnify you, meaning they will pay you. The payment is either to repair what's damaged, it's either to replace what's damaged, or to basically reinstate it. Okay. Um, it is not actually a cash payment. Typically, an insurance company is going to write you a check, or they're going to transfer monies to your personal account. But the principles of indemnity means that we're going to pay you in order for you to either repair it, to replace it, or reinstate it. Okay. Let's go ahead to the next slide. So here we talk about what different types of insurance. As I stated, there's so many different types of insurance, from life insurance, property insurance, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, health insurance. I mean, everything out there has some type of insurance that would apply to it. Okay. But again, right now we're going to focus more so on the home ownership or the home insurance aspect of this. Next slide. Okay, primary purpose of an insurance policy, and again, I'm going to sum it up. It's for protection. It's for your peace of mind. If something happens, you don't actually have to go out there and find the money to try to figure out how I'm going to fix this. The monies are there for you if basically it applies to the policy. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. It provides provides protection and peace of mind, knowing that if something happens, there is money out there for you to either repair it, replace it, or reinstate it. Okay, let's go into the next slide. Secondary functions of insurance. This gets a little bit deeper into what I want to talk to you about, because again, this deals more with all other aspects of insurance. But again, it's there for your protection. Let's go ahead to the next slide. We're going to skip this one. This one is a little bit over. This is a little bit more than what we want to talk about. Now, this is a very important topic here. So when you purchase insurance, the insurance company is saying, if you have a loss, if you have a peril, we will take care of that loss or that peril if it's the item that's listed on your particular policy. Let me back up a little bit. No one insurance policy is the same. They are slightly different, based on the area, based on the type of coverage that you purchase. Sometimes there's a misconception that if I purchase insurance, my insurance is going to look like my neighbor's policy, or it's going to look like my son or my daughter's policy if you have children that have homes. Insurance is not the same. It is not blanket, and it's not the same for everyone. Okay. So when you hear the word peril, peril is nothing more than a cause. What happened? Okay. Cause of loss. What happened to cause this damage? Okay. Let's go back a couple of slides. One peril that I know everyone knows, if something happens to your home, if there's a fire, if there's a hurricane, which causes wind or hail damage, explosion, riots, these are what we call perils. And a lot of companies will write policies based on the peril. If it's not one of the items that's listed, then you risk the chance of not having the coverage that you need. Okay. So one thing that you really want to pay attention to when you're purchasing insurance, especially for your homeowner's insurance, is make sure that it covers the perils that you feel you need protection against. Okay. Some companies will offer you a broad policy, which means they cover just about anything that happens. And then there are companies out there that will give you what we call limited perils. They may only cover 8 perils versus 14. So it's very important to pay attention to the types of perils that particular policy that you're purchasing, that it says that it covers. Okay, that is majorly important. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Here's some additional perils. And if anybody lived in the Houston area, in February, we actually experienced some of these perils. Okay, freeze is one of the items on there. But believe it or not, there's some policies out there that actually don't cover that. So you want to make sure that you hone in and you pay attention to the different type of perils that that particular policy says it covers. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, before we go to this, I want to back up a little bit. When you're purchasing insurance, you want to make sure that you purchase that policy that you need based on your home, your needs, okay? I can't stress this enough. Insurance is not a blanket policy. It's not like your auto insurance. There's a misconception that when I buy homeowners insurance, I have full coverage. That is not so, okay? On your auto policy, they will sell you a policy that says you have full coverage. That means anything that happens to that vehicle, you're going to have the coverage that you need in order to repair, replace, or reinstate that vehicle. Your homeowner's insurance, not so much. Okay. So, what happens with homeowners insurance is you have what we call a declaration page. That's the page that says, will insure you up to $100,000. Will insure you up to $200,000. It'll give you all the different numbers, your deductible, what you pay out of pocket. However, that one page is not your actual policy. You will typically get a booklet, okay, that spells out everything that one page, everything that it means, and that's the part that you have to pay attention to. So insurance, especially homeowners insurance, is the type of coverage that will give you coverage for certain items, and then it'll say right in the same sentence, however, we do not, and then it'll take it away. So it's back and forth. It gives you coverage, then it doesn't give you coverage. So never enter a contract thinking, I have homeowners insurance and I have a blanket policy and I'm covered for everything. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Okay. And so a lot of times homeowners don't know this until they have a loss or a peril, and then all of a sudden they expect payment, and that payment is not there because somewhere in that policy it says that they don't cover it, or there's certain stipulations about that. Okay. So if I can't stress that enough, when you're purchasing insurance, you want to make sure you pay attention to that. Okay. So this next slide talks about renter's insurance. Again, I know this is about home ownership, but if you know anyone out there that's renting, or if you're considering renting, there's renter's insurance out there basically that will take care of all of your personal property. So that means if you live in an apartment or a condo, or again rental property, you can have coverage for your personal possessions that you can pick up, take with you, and it's not expensive at all. Okay, so renter's insurance, if you're not a homeowner, this is ideal and something that you definitely want to have. Okay, it even protects you against dog bites. If you have a dog and the dog bites someone, your renter's insurance has a little clause in there about liability that will actually cover someone in the event of a dog bite. Okay, and the same for your homeowner's insurance as well. All right, let's go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so we kind of talked about this. Homeowners insurance provides you coverage for damage or destruction. We live here in Houston, in Texas. We have a lot of storms. The chances of us having some type of hurricane or hail is very possible. Okay, but remember that your homeowners insurance is not the same as your flood insurance. Okay, you will never have flood coverage under a standard homeowners policy. That is going to be something separate that is offered through the federal government, through FEMA. So just make sure that when you're making that home purchase or considering an area, that you make sure that you check it to make sure, are you in a floodplain? If that is the case, then you would have to take out a separate policy from your standard homeowners policy. Okay. All right, let's go to the next slide. While we're talking about that real quick, on your homeowners insurance, you're going to get coverage for the actual structure, or as remember we mentioned before, the risk, and you will also get coverage for your personal property. Personal property is anything you can pick up and take out of the house with you, okay? Meaning your clothes, your shoes, your personal possessions. Typically your homeowner's insurance is going to give you a percentage of coverage for your personal property. Now, my coverage for my personal property may not look like your coverage for your personal property. You have to assess your assets, meaning, what do you own? Do you own art? Do you own fine rugs and oriental rugs, or something in your home that may be unique that you need more coverage for? So you really need to assess the amount of assets that you have and then determine how much coverage you need. Okay. Your home itself, the structure, your agent is going to look at the dimensions of the home, the material, the type of floor, siding or bricks. And based on the value of your home, there's calculations for that I really don't know, but they will make an assessment of what would it cost to replace this house in the event of a loss. Okay. But on your contents, you have a little more say so on that. Your personal property, you have a little bit more say so. You can tell them, hey, I need this amount to cover my assets in my home. Okay. Let's go ahead to the next slide. Fire insurance. Basically, we talked about that. That's one of the perils. Fire. It's not a separate policy. This would be more for commercial properties, people who have businesses, that they would need an actual separate fire insurance. Okay. So let's go ahead to the next slide. Builder's risk. This is pretty important. Let's just say if you are building your home from ground up, there is insurance out there specific for builders or homes that are under construction. And basically what happens is the insurance company will cover you while you're in the process of building your home. Okay, that means you're building material, and you would not imagine the amount of homes where the builder may purchase material for the home, and then they come back the next day and the material is not there. Someone has stolen it. Okay. We have a lot of problem with people stealing copper lines that are being installed for your HVAC system. So there is builder's risk insurance out there that you can purchase to protect you while you're constructing or building your home. Okay. Next slide. We talked about this a moment ago, flood insurance. If anybody lived here through Harvey, no one expected certain areas to flood, but it did. Okay. So what may have not been deemed as a flood area 5 years ago, it might now be deemed that. But just remember that if you ever file a flood loss under your homeowner's policy, they're going to automatically deny it. Okay. And you might say, well, how do they know it's flood? How did they know it didn't come from the roof? They will send someone out there. They would basically do a full inspection, but there are ways that we can tell how that water how that water came into your home. Okay. So definitely think about flood insurance and consider it. It just takes that burden off of you in the event we have another major flood. Next slide. Okay, so I'm not going to get into the health insurance aspect, but just remember it's out there, it's important. But again, we're not going to dive into the health insurance aspect of it tonight. Okay. All right. So this deals with health insurance as well. I'm going to skip that one because again, we're talking about home ownership. Okay. Life insurance, it's important, doesn't apply to your home ownership, but if I can't stress enough, it is important for you to make sure that you have some type of life coverage, some type of policy for yourself. Okay. So here are all the different other types of insurance, and I didn't even have room for all of them. There's insurance for almost anything, even for your pet. Okay. But when it comes to homeowners insurance, again, if I can't stress anything, just make sure that you know what you're purchasing before you purchase it. I know that there was a question when I spoke with one of the reps about escrow. When you're purchasing a home, do you want to pay that insurance premium separate from your mortgage, or do you want to include it? It's a choice, but you can definitely purchase insurance where they take that annual premium and they put it inside of your mortgage and they spread it out over the 12 months instead of just having one lump sum payment. So that's something that you want to talk to your loan officer or whoever you're dealing with to see if, hey, do I want to have this lump sum of money at the end of the year to pay it beginning of the year, or do I want to go ahead and put this inside of my monthly mortgage where I'm not actually feeling that big bite or that big chunk of money coming out. Okay. So definitely you can have it escrowed in. I recommend it. I think it's the best way to go. But again, it's a personal choice. It's something that you have to make the decision what's best for you. Okay. All right. One more thing that I want to stress when you're purchasing your insurance policy, I can't really pay attention to the verbiage. Okay. Don't take for granted that it's insurance and, hey, I have coverage. Think about the amount of jewelry that you have. Make sure you have coverage for that. If you have a $5,000 dinner ring or wedding ring, your insurance policy is not going to be enough. Okay. Talk to your agent about maybe adding a rider on there where you can cover some of your valuables. Okay. Never, ever, ever leave cash in your home. And I'm just adding extras in here. Insurance does not cover cash. Okay. There's a lot of misconceptions. People think, oh, I had my cash. It was in my house. It's my personal property. Unfortunately, there's no way to trace or track cash. So insurance companies, they may give you $100 as courtesy, but they do not cover cash. Okay. If you have a business, make sure you don't mix your business equipment with your homeowner's equipment, because there's a way for them to know what's what and they will not pay for that under your homeowners. So what am I saying? Pay attention to the verbiage in your homeowners policy because it is very specific and again, it's just not a blanket policy. Okay. That's all I have. Like I said, I wanted to condense it a little bit because some of the things just did not apply to this. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yes, I had a question. I was wondering, and it goes back to the rental insurance, like if you're in an apartment complex,
Mhm.
because my daughter, they had just redid the parking lot and for us the parking spaces, and then one of the parking spots they made them all of them smaller, but one is right by the gate, and the pole that is there. If you come in, it's not tall. You can initially see it if you're going to back out, but once you start backing out, then you can't see it anymore. But uh, so it scraped the side of her car and everything. And she called the office to let them know because it's a handicap parking spot at the same time, and they don't have an extra wide or the white lines or none of that down. They haven't gotten back in touch with her, but she does have renter's insurance. So would her renter's insurance cover that?
That is a very good question, and thank you for asking that. But unfortunately, it will not. Okay. Renter's insurance will never cover anything dealing with your automobile. Okay. And the same goes for homeowners insurance. If something happens, and let's just say if your car is in the garage, or as you mentioned, ma'am, um, you would have to file that under your auto policy. Your homeowners, your renter's policy will never pay for anything dealing with your car. That was a very good question. Hopefully, I answered that for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense up on as far as like the renter's policy, and yes, it is we do have full coverage on the vehicle, but I was also wondering if the apartment complex was kind of responsible. So, but if not, I did want to know if it was possible for the renter's insurance since it was on the property and she has coverage.
Right. So let me give you a little bit of a caveat to that. So what you can do is file that under your own auto policy. let your insurance company know what happened. They're going to take a statement from you. And then from there, if your insurance company feels that they have the right to go after the apartment complex, they can go through a process called subrogation. Okay. That was one of our slides. I didn't want to get into it because I thought it would get a little confusing. But anytime that, the insurance company feel that they have somebody else is responsible, they can actually go through their process called subrogation, where they're actually going after that individual to say, hey, you are responsible for that. But you wouldn't be able to go through that. But once they pay you and indemnify you, then they have what we call a vested interest. Then they can go after that apartment complex or whoever to try to get your money back. Okay. So I would file it under your auto policy and let them deal with the apartment complex.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I don't think we have any more questions right now at the moment.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. At this time, we will now have our closing remarks. I'm sorry, before we do closing remarks, let's go to our outreach events. Let me share the screen back with you all.
While you're looking for that, can I add something I wanted to share with folks that I didn't in my presentation? This is Mabel.
Sure, go ahead.
So two things I wanted to just kind of mention I think are important for new homeowners that I failed to mention. One is when I show you that valuation notice that you're going to receive in April, March or April once you become a homeowner. A lot of people will tend to just go, well, I escrow my property taxes, so they may not even open it, or if they do, they'll take a cursory look at it. Go ahead and take a good look at that and see just what's going on and whether or not you agree, because it's going to be your job to, if you disagree or you think there's an error, it's going to be your job to file that protest and say, hey, Hcad, this is not right, and here's why. Here's some information I have that we may not have when we value your property. And the reason I say that is because if you're escrowing, once the tax bill goes out, the tax bill is going to be mailed to your mortgage company. They're going to pay that. They're going to pay whatever is on that bill, and it could leave you with an escrow shortage if it goes up, which means your house note's going to go up the next month, the following year to cover that shortage. So don't just think because you're escrowing it, you don't have to really bother out looking at the annual value notice. Go ahead and take a good look at it when you get it, and it is your right to protest if you disagree. And then finally, the one last thing I wanted to mention, as we were talking about January 1st being your date of value, you may say you move into your house in August or September. We're always looking at our properties, and when we get that tax bill, there could be a sigh of relief to say, oh, it's not as much as I thought it was. If you moved in mid-year, and you moved into new construction, keep one thing in mind, that that property that you paid your first year taxes on is going to be based on the condition of the property on January 1st, which means that it may not have been a whole house. You could still be paying taxes on the empty lot for that year, or just half a house. So when that following January rolls around, that's when the full improvement, the improvement being the dwelling on top of the land, that's when the improvement is going to show. So make sure that you understand that you could put what you're actually paying property taxes on for that first year, because that could lead to some surprises down the road. Those are two things I just wanted to make sure I included. So thank you.
Thank you, Mabel. Our upcoming outreach event will be our virtual lunch and learn on August the 20, 2021. Our topic will be homelessness, awareness, prevention, and transitional housing. Our 360 Road to Homeownership series, session 4, it will be August the 26th, 2020, from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And the topic will be maintenance and care after ownership.
Thank you guys for joining us this evening. We really appreciate everyone for joining us. While we're doing these 360 Road to Home Ownership, I know you've taken in a lot of information tonight, and you may have some questions later on. If you have questions, please feel free to send us an email, and we'll try to get all of your questions answered. You have the contact information to both presenters, and I'm sure they're open to take any of your questions as well. But again, please don't hesitate to send over any questions that you may have. Again, thank you guys for joining us tonight, and we hope to see you in our next series.